iHeart, get ready. Fantasy football is here. Welcome to the Scout Fantasy Show. ScoutFantasy.com is home to the Fantasy Football World Championships and the best players in the world. Real money winners giving their secrets to help you win. Now exclusively on iHeart. This is the Scout Fantasy Show with your host, the one, the only, Dr. Roto.
Dr. Roto. Get out the insurance cards. Get out the copay. The office? It's open, my friends. Week 16 come and gone. Players coming in, coming out. Coaches getting fired. Oh, Rex Ryan. See you later. Rex Ryan was a disaster. We talked about that on these podcasts. But what I'll try to do today is we'll go through some news and notes. We'll go through some of the box scores. We'll talk about why you should never be playing in Week 17. And if you are playing in Week 17, we'll try to get you the news that you need to help you win your league. Because it's not easy. But first, I want to recap the game last night between the Dallas Cowboys and the Lions. Anybody who thought that the Dallas Cowboys weren't going to try, and I think I was one of the people that worried about the amount of carries that people were going to get, and I was right. Ezekiel Elliott only got 13 touches, but he had 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dez Bryant only had 4 receptions, but he had 70 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he threw a pass for a touchdown. So Dallas played very well. And right now, Detroit is in a situation, win and you're in, and lose and you're done. And you get to play the Green Bay Packers, who are riding very high right now. Very high. So, needless to say, I think the Lions are in copious amounts of trouble. And they better hope for a Tampa Bay loss, and they better hope for a Redskin loss if they want any chance of making this playoffs, because I don't think they beat Green Bay that next week. I really don't. So, let's just touch. I had mentioned that Rex Ryan got fired. He was a disaster. I think Rex Ryan is one of those guys who has this really motivational personality. You really buy into what he's saying. He's a player's coach, but at the end of the day, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's not that bright. I mean, the whole thing at the icing the kicker was a disaster. He didn't call the timeout when he should have. I mean, you're getting Reggie Bush in the overtime. You hadn't played in the entire game. And you let Jay Ajayi run for like 7,000 yards against you. So what does that tell me? It tells me that you're really overrated. I think the Bills played well this year in spite of Rex Ryan, not because of Rex Ryan. So he won't be missed. Now, I'm sure Rex will end up on some pregame show somewhere on some channel because he's got a personality and people will buy into it. So be it. That said, this guy stinks. And you know who stinks more than Rex Ryan? His brother Rob Ryan, who hasn't been successful anywhere in the NFL. Any stop along the way, he has not been successful. But he's gotten jobs because he's Buddy Ryan's son. I get that. I'm all over it. Okay, but you still stink. You weren't good in the Dallas. You weren't good for the Saints. You weren't good for the Bills. Where were you good, dude? Seriously, where were you good? Terrible stuff. Just terrible. So I think we'll see a lot more coaches be fired. And let me see if I can do a guesstimate right here. So let's see. The standings. Belichick, no. Gase, no. Rex, yes. Todd Bowles, I think, gets to stay. Mike Tomlin, no. Harbaugh, no. Marvin Lewis, no. Hugh Jackson, I say stays. Bill O'Brien, no. Malarkey, no. Pagano, no. Gus Bradley's already done. For the Raiders, Dell Leatherjacket, no. Andy Reid, no. Denver Broncos, no for Kubiak. Mike McCoy, I think the axe could fall on him. I think he could be a goner. Jason Garrett, no. McAdoo, no. Jay Gruden, no. Doug Peterson, I don't think so, but I'd fire him personally. McCarthy, no. Jim Caldwell, it's possible if they lose out. Mike Zimmer, only if he's lost control of the locker room, which I hope he hasn't. And John Fox, no. For Atlanta, no there. I don't think he goes. Quinn has been good. Cutter, no. Peyton, I think, is done. I think Sean Payton's done. Ron Rivera gets another year because they made the Super Bowl last year, but he stinks. Seattle, Pete Carroll stays. Bruce Arians could get whacked. He could get whacked. I think Chip Kelly could get whacked. So I think we're looking at another 4 or 5 guys who could get whacked. I hope Arians doesn't. I don't believe it to be Arians' fault. I think he's got issues there. I think he's got an old team. And he's got one great player. And he's got a lot of guys. I mean, John Brown wasn't healthy. Michael Floyd was a basket case. Carson Palmer's like 138 years old. It wasn't easy for him. I think he did a lot with very little. I think the Cardinals played to their potential, and if Bruce Arians gets fired, I don't think that's his doing. I really don't. I don't think that was his doing. So let's just go through the scoreboard very quickly there, and we'll look at some of these games from this week. The Jets-Patriots, I told you, Tom Brady, if you were in the Super Bowl and you had him, he gave you 214 yards, but he gave you 3 touchdowns, but he didn't play the whole game. But LeGarrette Blount, we knew this was a Blount week with 2 touchdowns. We saw that. For the Jets, Bilal Powell underperformed. It was very underwhelming, so I feel badly about that for people. Blake Bortles was the guy to own this week, as was Allen Robinson. Doug Marrone realized, hey, let me move Allen Robinson around. What an idea. What a novel thought. And all of a sudden, Allen Robinson goes 9 for 147. We saw Marcus Mariota get injured in a horrible injury, so hopefully he'll be back under center next year. I really want to see more of Derrick Henry. I think Tennessee is pretty much done, as we know. I want to see Derrick Henry next week. Let's see what this guy can do. I think he can do a lot, and I think he's a guy worth watching. Minnesota, what happened in Minnesota with not listening to Mike Zimmer, something's got to give there. Either a player needs to get cut or fined, or the coach needs to get fired. Because when the coach says do X and the players say we're doing Y, that's a problem. Coaches and players need to be on the same wavelength. When you're not on the same wavelength, there's problems in the locker room. So right now, if Mike Zimmer tells somebody else to do something, the player might think, I don't have to listen. I don't have to listen because, Terrence Newman didn't listen. Well, Terrence Newman should be cut. When was the last time Terrence Newman was any good? So I think if the ownership and the GM have to really stand by Mike Zimmer here and say, look, if this ever happens again, you're on the first road out of Eden Prairie. We're done with you. Right? We're done with you. That's what I'd say. For Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers at 347 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just a note. And I know this will probably be bothering some of you. It's obviously bothering me, which is why I'm talking about it. There are 2 leagues. I won 4 leagues this year. And there were 2 more that I know because of the numbers, because we show the numbers. Had I been in the championship game, I would have won. And Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback on one of those teams. It's frustrating. I lost in week 15. How'd I make week 16? I got Aaron Rodgers and 347 yards and 4 touchdowns leading me all the way. Very frustrating. Nothing you can do. It's what happens. It's why it's fantasy football. How about Adam Thielen, 12 receptions for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns? Who had him? Who knew that was coming? Who knew 44 points from Adam Thielen was going to be the norm? Not me. Had I known, I would have played him for sure. Tell you that right now. Congratulations to the Cleveland Browns for getting their first win. Congratulations to Hugh Jackson. And congratulations to the city and the team. And these guys never quit. And I love seeing that. They played hard. And to the Chargers, I think Mike McCoy's done. I think this is a team with some players here. Some guys are getting older, but they had a lot of injuries. But I think Mike McCoy is done here. And I'm not sure it's his fault entirely. He had a lot of injuries to play around. Now next week, Kenneth Farrow's out. I mean, this team is a train wreck. So I don't think it's his fault per se, but I think Mike McCoy may get whacked. The Redskins need to beat the Giants and they need the Lions to lose. And if these 2 things happen, there's a good chance that they'll be in the playoffs. Right? And if they are, I don't want to play the Redskins in the playoffs. I think Kirk Cousins is playing at a very high level. But I think at the same time, I think the defense stinks. So I'm intrigued by Cousins. I'm intrigued by Jackson. I'm intrigued by some of their offensive players. But at the same time, their defense really needs to improve rapidly. For Chicago, I think I'm excited for Chicago's future between Jordan Howard and Cameron Meredith. And if Alshon Jeffrey's back, I think there's some guys there that showed offensive promise. So as I go into next year, I will think to myself that the Bears have some skill players that I will have interest in drafts. Now, I'll be honest with you, I won't remember a lot. Once January hits and I start turning to baseball, I won't remember a lot of this, but I will try my best to write down some notes and say, Cam Meredith, pretty good, right? So when I'm starting to get back into it again, and I look at my football starting in July, and I look at Cameron Meredith, I'll be like, wow, this guy was pretty good when I needed him, right? This guy was a pretty good player, and I think the team likes him. All right, Atlanta going against Carolina. You know what I think of Cam Newton. The guy is terrible. I will say this, as I look into next year, I don't want any part of Kelvin Benjamin either. I will always draft Greg Olsen, and I'll always do it in the 5th or 6th round, and I'll feel pretty good about it. But as for anybody else on this team, maybe Ted Ginn, but I don't want anybody else on this team right now. For Atlanta, I think Matt Ryan is going to go higher in drafts next year than he should. I'm all in on Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman. I think these guys really have earned my trust this year, especially Freeman, but I do like Coleman too. Julio Jones is a top 5 pick in any format, but he is often injured, and we discussed this. And I had said, do you really want Julio Jones? What if Atlanta wasn't winning and they were losing? He'd be done for the year. Ask yourself that question. If they were 5-10, wouldn't he be shut down for the year? I worried about that, and I think I was right to worry about that. Oakland and Indianapolis feel very badly for Derek Carr, who I think is a really good guy, a really good person, but he's not going to be around. No matter what they tell you, this dude's not going to be around in the playoffs. Matt McGloin is going to be the guy. I don't think Matt McGloin sucks. He's had some good plays, but is he good enough to get to a Super Bowl? I don't think so, but I don't think Oakland's good enough to get to a Super Bowl. How about that? I think Pittsburgh's better than Oakland. I think Miami might arguably be better than Oakland. I think Oakland is getting better, but without Carr, I think they got some big problems here. For Indianapolis, I think Chuck Pagano should be Gano. I'm done with this guy. I'm done. Andrew Luck, it seems like he's regressing instead of progressing, and that's a problem. Really is. All right, Tampa Bay blew a really important game, possibly the most important game of the year because it could have kept them out of the playoffs. The New Orleans Saints win this game 31-24. Drew Brees, 299 yards. But to me, the story of the game was Mark Ingram running really, really with purpose. Really with purpose, and that's what I like to see. As for the Buccaneers, this whole three-headed hydra of Doug Martin and Jacquizz Rodgers and Charles Sims. Doug Martin was never Dirk Cutter's guy. He liked Sims and he liked Rodgers from when he played for him in the Falcons. Martin was done. Mike Evans is a good player, but this team is missing a good running back and they're missing a good receiver. I think Tampa Bay is getting closer, but they're not there yet. They're just not there yet. All right, for Seattle, my heart goes out to Tyler Lockett, who I really think is a special player, but man, that was a bad injury, and I think he could be out for an extended period of time. I don't know whether we see him for maybe like the first 4 or 5 weeks next season. But I got to give credit for Russell Wilson, 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. They lost the game. How about some credit to the Cardinals for playing well? How about just David Johnson being a star of epic proportions? Anybody who had David Johnson, if you didn't make the playoffs, I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you because I can't blame David Johnson. He was absolutely awesome this year. All right, San Francisco against the Rams. The 49ers win this game. And personally, if I were a 49er fan, I'd be pissed off that they won this game. I'd be like, you won a game? Why don't you want the first pick? Seriously, why do I want the second pick and why do I want to give it to the Cleveland Browns? That's just terrible. Do I really need to win this game? What purpose does it serve? Now, as a player, I don't think that way. As a player, I want to win. As a general manager, I'm biting my nails going, what are you doing? Stop it. Stop the madness. All right, Houston beats Cincinnati in really a brutal game to watch. But credit to Tom Savage for getting the victory. Alfred Blue looked great. DeAndre Hopkins didn't look great. Cincinnati played him pretty well. But I think that, I want to see what the Texans can do. I wish J.J. Watt was there, and I want to see a healthy Lamar Miller. But I think the Texans could win a playoff game. It's possible. Depending on the matchup, they could win a game. I don't think Kansas City's the right matchup for them. But, I think this team has more legs than people give them credit for. Pittsburgh and the Ravens, and I'm going to tell you guys this. My son, Dr. Roto Jr., not really big football fan. But here we are, and we watch the fourth quarter of this game. And he's got some friends in school who are Steeler fans. And when the quarter starts, it's 20-10. And by the time the game's over, it's 31-27. They're scoring at will. And you know what? I'm not sure, but I think it made my son a football fan. I think he saw Le'Veon Bell and Kyle Juszczyk and Antonio Brown and on all these guys. They look great. It was a really inspiring fourth quarter of football. So just a great job for both those guys on Christmas Day to put on such a good show. And if they made my son a football fan because of it, I will be indebted to them for life because I really hope he enjoys the game as much as I do. Finally, Kansas City against Denver. Kansas City wins this one 33-10. Alex Smith, 244 yards and a touchdown. Dontari Poe with a touchdown. But Tyreek Hill getting 6 carries. I love to see that. And mostly what I love to see is Travis Kelce getting 11 receptions on 12 targets. Kelce is their best receiver, and he's an impact player who needs to get the football. So I'm very happy that he did 160 yards and a touchdown. He certainly helped me win my Beat Dr. Roto contest. And he's just a terrific, terrific player. For Denver, it just goes to show you need a quarterback. I think John Elway tried to buy himself through this year, hoping that Paxton Lynch will be ready for next year. And you know what? They blew a year there in Denver. Trevor Siemian was never going to lead this team to a Super Bowl. Maybe a playoff, but when you can't throw the ball to Demaryius Thomas goes 3 for 20 and Emmanuel Sanders goes 1 for 26, what game do you think you're going to win? What game do you think you're going to win? There's no chance of you winning any game when that happens. None. Zero. Nada. Right? Never going to happen. So I don't know what they were thinking, but I can tell you, Denver had no chance. All right, so what we're going to do, probably not today, but moving forward, we are going to look at Week 17, and every day we're going to get some more information. Okay? So the information here is that the bench, we're going to bench Tyrod Taylor. And here it says, this is purely a business decision by Buffalo, who owed Tyrod $30.75 million if he was injured in the finale. So there you go. Sit him down. Hello, EJ Manuel. Right? So what we're going to try to do as this week unfolds is go through the teams, look to see which players seem to be playing, which players don't. If you're in a Week 17 league, only thing we're to have is please, I beg you, stop with the Week 17. It's a mess. I like it as you want to play all the teams play and one team wins money, like a jackpot for 1 week, great. But to run a league to Week 17 when half the players aren't even playing? How's that good when Le'Veon Bell doesn't play? How's that good when Antonio Brown doesn't play? How's that good when Tyrod Taylor doesn't play? What did you get out of that? That was good football? You won because you had Ryan Fitzpatrick as your quarterback? Come on. That's just terrible. Seriously, it's just terrible. You need to know better. You need to demand more. Okay? So what we're going to do, like I said, as this week unfolds, I'm not around Friday, but certainly on Wednesday and Thursday, I will go through the teams. Who do I expect to play? Who do I expect to sit? Guys I want to watch closely. Guys I want to file away for next year. And then, of course, next week we will start looking at the playoff fantasy football. At Scout Fantasy, we have 3 formats, and I want you to go to playscoutfantasy.com. And there's 3 formats. The first one is the Beat Dr. Roto Adam Ronis contest. It's free. Come join us, put your team together, and if you beat our teams, then all of a sudden, congratulations, you get a free month of Scout. And if you're the number 1 team, you win an entry into the online championship. 2, Maui Madness. $25 to get a free 6-night stay at a Maui 5-star resort and tickets for 4, airfare for 4. That's a pretty good deal. And if you get a 5-pack, we'll only charge you $100 for it. So you get a free one there. And then finally, the Playoff Fantasy World Championship. 6 teams in a league, $199 each. The winning team gets $600, I think it is. I think it's $600, $500 or $600. And then you get a chance to win $20,000. $20,000. That's pretty awesome there too, right? That is pretty awesome. I want to just make sure I want to get those numbers for you. I want to make sure you have that because, that would be pretty good. And by the way, congratulations to Kimra Schleicher, who first female fantasy football world champion. I think that's pretty amazing stuff. That's pretty amazing stuff. So let's see here. The Scout Playoff Draft World Championship. So I told you this. Right. 1 and 6 will win $500. Over $50,000 in prizes. A $20,000 grand prize. 1 and 6 will win $500. So that's a pretty good deal as well. But I love the Maui Madness and I love the Beat the Dr. Roto and Adam Ronis contest because those you can play on the cheap. Right? So we have 3 price points at Scout Fantasy for you. So go to playscoutfantasy.com and take a look at playoff fantasy football. I love it. All right, now it's time to put away the insurance cards, put away the copay. The office is closed, my friends. Sad to say, Carrie Fisher passed away today. Princess Leia, that's how we all know her, from Star Wars. So our thoughts and prayers go out to her and her family, but I mean, she will live on in our hearts. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know what I'm talking about. But right now, we're football fans, and we're going to be paying attention for another week, and we're going to try to get you to a fantasy championship if you're playing in Week 17, and we're going to get you to a playoff championship if you play in one of our leagues. So this is Dr. Roto saying be well and take care.
Thanks for listening to the Scout Fantasy Show. There's never been a better time to join the Scout Army. Visit scoutfantasy.com. Use the promo ROTO for 2 months free. And don't forget, fantasy players, please thumbs up the podcast on the iHeart app. See you next time. Go Scouts!